Hi, welcome to today's segment of Our Ventura TV. My name is George Alger. Today's topic is kids in coding, and our guest expert today is Scott Matalon, who is a longtime educator and a business owner. Welcome, Scott.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Could you highlight your credentials?
Sure, I've been in education kind of off and on for the last 18 years, and I have my master's degree in educational technology. And my passion is kind of introducing kids and technology and what they can do with it in their future.
Brilliant. So that we're all on the same page, what is coding?
So coding is, think of it like this. If we had just a box and it was a metal frame and it just had some wires in it, it's probably the most uneducated thing on the planet. What coding is the term that's given to a programmer that actually tells that box or that device what to do. And for a long time we thought of it as just computer programming. But when you're in coding, coding is the actual language that you're using to teach this device to do something. And that's kind of what coding is. It's getting to understand the instructions behind this device doing whatever it is that you want it to do.
Good. And I would imagine a key controversy you might contend with is the fact that some people are concerned that their kids are already spending too much time on computers and devices. What might you say to that?
Absolutely, and it's a growing concern across the nation that I think just as educators and parents need to address. And I think it's great to have a distinction between productive time on the computer or the phone or whatever device they're using and just mindless consumption of things that they're looking at on their phone and computer. And when we draw a line in the sand and we say that this is productive and this is not productive, we can start framing an argument as to why it might be important for our kids today to learn the technology behind how to make that screen time productive.
Okay, and just to elaborate that on a little bit, for a concerned parent, is there some guidance you might provide them to make this distinction?
Well, I think moderation is always key in everything. When the kids are doing their homework and they've been on the computer for an hour, is that a long time or a short time? I think the answer to the question is it depends on what they're doing. And that's what I think parents should take away from the discussion is if the kids are focused on doing something that's productive, that's meaningful, that will give them an end result, I think that screen time can go up. Does that mean they should be on 5 or 10 hours of the day? Probably not. But is an hour or two or even a little bit more out of the question? Probably not. The other thing I would add is age. The question is out there, is it okay for my young 7 or 8-year-old to be on the computer the same amount of time as my 14 or 15-year-old? And I would think we'd all probably know the answer is no. But again, what is the quality of time that they're doing on the computer versus the kind of mindless activity that they're doing? And if we can have a balance between those two, I think the future is great.
Good. So Scott, when we're talking about kids in coding, what is even the age that we're describing here?
I think across the country we're seeing kids starting almost before they're reading.
Wow.
And it's pretty amazing to see when kids are learning how to do this. There's an opportunity for them out there to kind of take symbols and drag and drop them and put them in a certain order. And it's amazing to see the kids kind of innately just get that. And I don't know, when I was growing up, we didn't really even have a computer to begin with, but I don't know that it was just this kind of innate thing that kids are doing. I've personally seen as young as 5 get in front of a computer and give it a set of instructions, albeit basic, to get it to do a certain thing, like play a little video game or have a little sprite jump across the screen or have you. And I've seen kids who are 16 doing some phenomenal things with computers. So I think the reality of that is just going to be based on the child. But there's a lot of research out there that suggests anything before 5 is not good for the brain development, and anything after in moderation is good.
Okay. Now, it seems to me that all kids are pretty technologically literate. That may not be the case, but that seems to be that way. And nevertheless, from your perspective, even if you have someone that doesn't seem to be passionate about coding or computers, would you recommend it as simply a way to be literate in the modern society?
Absolutely, and there's actually a phrase that's coined out there called coding is the literacy of the 21st century.
Okay.
And when we look at it from an educational perspective, there's universities across the country right now re-looking at that second language requirement for entrance in. And what they've kind of come to the conclusion is coding is so important these days. And the United States has a trend of somewhat falling behind the rest of the world in having programmers be able to do these tasks that are coming out. that they're looking at that and making a decision that coding is so important that they're willing to use that as a second language requirement to get into college.
Wow.
So it's really becoming kind of a force across the country to get as many kids educated in coding as possible.
I see. So to almost reverse the paradigm that we were just addressing, is there something you might suggest for parents to encourage their kids to get more interested in coding?
Absolutely. There's a unique thing that happens when kids get in front of a computer and start figuring out this coding concept, and that's creativity. Imagine a society where you don't have a cell phone, you don't have the internet, you don't have a TV. That was long in the past. There's not a kid out there today that doesn't know what a cell phone is. And to take that concept and say, it's not going away, it's not going anywhere, how can we utilize that to help society? I think anytime you have kids and the ability to have them create and design and explore, I mean, they're the most connected, population, if you will, in the entire world is right now. They can pick up their phone, even as little as 5, 4, 3, and if they have relatives across the globe and are living in another country, in real time they can see them and have a video chat. That's never been done before in history. And I think it's really important to get kids engaged in that and to have them realize, even if they don't think they're interested, they're using it every day. And to get them to be able to be creative and problem solve in their world is going to just lend them to a very successful future.
I wonder if you could underscore the creative aspect a little more, because in terms of technology, at least from my perspective, I can see the problem-solving aspect, and the creative part I do understand is important, but it may not be as easy to differentiate in a parent's mind, for instance, relative to learning a trumpet or to painting. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go into any aspect of life. For example, I'm going to bring in drones for a minute because I'm going to make a connection into the art world. About 5 years ago, drones didn't even exist. And in the video production world and entertainment, there had to be a way to try and fly a camera through very close quarters, and oftentimes these shots weren't even done. 5 years ago, the drones got introduced into media, and suddenly we were creating these amazing shots that our audiences were connecting with. And I think that's where parents need to step back for a second and realize, well, is technology as important as art or music? Well, in essence, it is, because now we're able to take something that didn't exist, technology and coding and computer science created this, what we're going to call a drone. They put a camera on it, and now suddenly we're creating pieces of work that we've never seen before. So if we just take a little step back and think about what can we utilize technology for, to either entertain us or to express who we are, or to talk about things that don't exist in the future. Before coming in and talking with you, I read a very interesting statistic. It said 65% of school-aged children today will have a job utilizing a technology that doesn't even currently exist.
Wow, that is amazing.
And that hit me, and I realized that this coding, computer programming, computer science is just so valuable that we have to be teaching our kids this.
Well, since you are involved in the profession of education, is the educational system established well enough in our contemporary standards to be bringing kids to the proper awareness to how to code?
Well, I wish I could say yes. I think the reality is there are so many demands on our school system today that sometimes there's not enough money or resources to be able to get all of the kids through and introduced into computer science and coding. I know there's a lot of folks across the country who are trying to subsidize that and have local businesses contribute. But in general, I wish there was more out, at least in the public school system, to get kids connected with this literacy of the 21st century.
So that being the case, are there things that parents might look to help support their kids' interests or to help even inspire their kids' interests?
Absolutely. I think look in your community. There's lots of after-school programs available. There's businesses all over the country that are really taking an effort and a step to create opportunities for kids to come in and learn this type of coding and computer science skills.
Good. And I mean, I'm sure all the programs vary, but what might a kid expect to do? I mean, from a parent's point of view, you might be wondering, am I just sending him off to some place where he's going to play games? I mean,
Sure.
what's the difference?
I think what makes the difference is looking for a program that has a set guideline and someone who can walk you through the steps of what it is that their child is going to accomplish. There's a notion out there that it needs to be something that they can build their skills with, and not just take a quick class and you kind of like take a Spanish class for a few weeks and then you kind of forget your Spanish. It's the very same thing with coding is you want to look for something that's long-term, that engages the kids, gets them creating, gets them thinking, and just brings out that love of technology in that lesson.
Yeah. Now, you also bring up an interesting point, though. When you talk about long-term, isn't it true that languages, or coding languages, are constantly evolving?
It is. Much like our languages evolve over time, there are base languages in computer science and computer programming that really don't change.
Okay.
But as programmers develop new ideas and new concepts, snippets of those codes change over time and create new languages.
Okay.
So the concept is, and back to the parents, what should I be looking for? You should be really looking for kind of that base or root language that the kids can learn that will then allow them to progress and learn different languages as they go.
Okay, very good. And in terms of, let's say, a longer-term development of a child, I mean, if the kid demonstrates an interest in it, you know, perhaps it makes it easy for a parent to say, I'm going to support this. But if a child doesn't seem to be that interested in it, should a parent be proactive in trying to inspire a greater interest, since it is becoming every day more of an importance to living in society, or just look at like playing clarinet? It's like, well, if he likes it or doesn't like it. If he doesn't like it, forget it.
I think there's kind of a mix between the two. I think anytime you try and teach a child something that they don't want to learn, there's already going to be kind of a wall up. As far as a parent's perspective go, little pieces over the course of a long time, try it, they didn't like it, okay, it goes away for a little bit, and then it gets reintroduced. You know, oftentimes kids mature and their likes change over time. So if you feed them a little bit of it and they didn't like it, that's okay. Let some time pass, and as they mature, maybe they will gravitate towards it, or maybe they have a friend who went into a center somewhere and gave it a try and they said, wow, this is really fun, and it'll inspire them over time. Much like sports, not every child is going to be a football player or soccer or gymnastics or dance. They pick stuff that they like. And I think it's the same with technologies. They're going to pick the components over time that they're interested in and want to do those. And then once they show a little bit of interest, I think it's up to us as parents to go ahead and feed that to them and let it grow and blossom and see what happens.
Well said, Scott. We're just about out of time, but I think we can sneak in a website if you have one that people can go to for more information. And if you have a very quick summating message for the viewers, this would be a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. To find out more information, you can go to codeninjas.com. And what I'd leave the audience with is this. Think about having our kids become the producers of technology, not just the consumers. Allow them to have some screen time. Be confident that it's not going to morph their brain into something. And give them the opportunity to create, problem solve, and watch what happens in the future with them and how much they can just blossom and become a very productive part of society and feel fantastic about themselves doing it.
Thank you very much, Scott.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
This is George Alger signing off for this segment of Our Ventura TV. Until I meet again.